Thank you again for joining us today, and welcome back to our first episode of the year. My name is Nathan Rolfe, and I'm the president of the Association U.S. Cyber Forces and your host for this segment. On behalf of the Tatora Breda Institute and the Association U.S. Cyber Forces, I'd like to welcome you to this month's episode of our Cyber Workforce Series, where we speak with cyber professionals about their careers and journeys to help inform others on the diversity of paths within the cybersecurity industry, and hopefully support you, the listener, on your own personal cyber career journey. Before we meet this month's guests, I'd like to share a little bit about the two organizations that make this series possible, the Tatora Breda Institute and the Association U.S. Cyber Forces. The Tatora Breda Institute was created to promote collaboration across public and private sectors with a focus on business, culture, and diversity. Tatora Breda looks to reshape and develop collaboration and partnering practices with a view to improving and securing business and economies. A core concept of the Institute is their think tank for partnerships in AI and cybersecurity. The think tank has allowed Tatora Breda to bring together experts and leaders from the public and private sectors and academia around the world to reshape and develop collaboration and partnering practices while embracing the most critical technology growth. If you're not currently a member of the Institute, we invite you to visit their website at www.tatorabreda.org to learn more and see how you can participate. The Association of U.S. Cyber Forces is a nonprofit professional association that provides the voice for members of the cyber workforce who serve in the military, government agencies, and industry on specific cyber issues impacting national security. AUSCF is an advocate for positive change to policies and programs that better serve the membership and help minimize gaps between private and public sector cybersecurity efforts. If you'd like to learn more or join AUSCF, please visit our website at www.auscf.org. During today's discussion, please feel free to drop questions into the chat as time allows, and we will attempt to weave in those answers. Your questions and feedback really help shape this and future events as we move through. Today's going to be a unique episode. We have two guests for the first time ever in our series. We are joined by Iulia and Justin Griffin, the co-founders of Cactus Group, a women-owned small business specializing in cybersecurity, risk management framework, and program support. Iulia Griffin is a dynamic executive and project management professional with extensive experience in leadership, risk management, and operational excellence. As the CEO of the Cactus Group, she has built a reputation for driving innovation, forging strategic partnerships, and mentoring high-performing teams. Her leadership journey spans impactful roles at UBS, Morgan Stanley, and T. Rowe Price, where she excelled in managing complex projects, regulatory compliance, and cross-functional collaboration. Beyond her professional accomplishments, Iulia is a certified project management professional with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Towson University and executive leadership training from Yale and Rutgers. She is an active mentor and lifelong learner, and she also finds joy in the culinary arts. Justin Griffin is a seasoned information technology and operational technology cybersecurity subject matter expert with over 20 years of experience spanning commercial and Department of Defense sectors. He's highly proficient in implementing multiple cybersecurity frameworks, including the NIST Risk Management Framework, NIST Cybersecurity Framework, and the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, CMMC. As a recognized RMF, CSF, and CMMC SME, Justin has provided expert guidance to organizations navigating the complexities of IT governance, compliance, and cybersecurity risk management. Justin is the co-founder and chief technology officer of the Cactus Group, where he leads technology strategy and execution, ensuring alignment with organizational goals. For the past several years, Justin has focused intensely on industrial cybersecurity, contributing to the protection and compliance of ICS such as SCADA and microgrid systems. Justin and Iulia, welcome to our show today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nate.
Thanks for having us.
So that's a lot to cover in the bios. And again, we have, this is our first time really having a pair of individuals on here. So let's kind of get down to the basics. Let's talk a little bit more about how your own personal path led you to starting your own cybersecurity company. And just to keep it simple, Iulia, we'll start with you.
Sure, Nate, thank you. As you've covered and mentioned, I graduated Towson with a degree in business administration. I think originally I really aspired to be a lawyer, although the timing didn't quite align with going into the law school right after college. So I started my career in finance, did quite a few roles in the back office, had a privilege of holding various roles across different banks, seeing different initiatives, being part of different projects, processes, changes. That exposure was a definitely great opportunity to have, and I'm extremely glad I had that finance exposure. And tenure. And I think at a certain point back in 22, 23, I just had to try to do something different. I think that career path has run its course, and I realized that it's just time for a change. And I think the opportunity presented itself, and Justin and I saw an opportunity in opening our own business. There was a great synergy between skill sets, and we took advantage of that and just went for it. And here we are, almost 3 years later, continuing to build, expand, and build our portfolio of opportunities for contracts.
Awesome. Thank you. Justin?
Yeah, so IT's kind of been a part of my life the whole time. I grew up, my father had his own business in the late 80s and 90s doing computer work. So, I can remember, being around computers as long as I've been alive. Using that, I kind of always had a passion for it. I jumped straight into doing desktop administration and help desk work right out of high school. Worked for a company that was able to pay for my degree. So I got my degree in cybersecurity management and policy, which gave me another hurdle because I really didn't understand compliance that early in my career. So I worked my way through doing system administration work. I did server builds. I even worked as the sole system administrator and IT manager for an entire machine shop for a few years, way back in my career. Then I got a taste of government contracts. Worked for Public Health Command, which was really cool. I got to participate in a project that was doing hearing tests for soldiers. So we had a direct impact to the warfighter, which really drove my passion from there, knowing that we were really having an impact. And if that system didn't work, it was a big deal. So moving from there into further Army contracts, I supported DISA as a cybersecurity trainer. We did defensive cyber all over the country, teaching warfighters and even some civilians in some high-level roles, defensive cyber tactics. From there, moved into straight compliance, cybersecurity, doing RMF, both for IT systems, and now for the past 4 to 5 years, directly focused on operational technology and critical infrastructure.
Awesome. It's quite a storied career on that side as well. So it sounds like the two of you kind of took that whole piece of the cyber and IT world, Justin, that you were in. Iulia, you were very much in the business side of the house. And I guess it just made the most sense to kind of bring those together, and thus we have the Cactus Group.
Yeah. Yeah, and to add, the 2.5 years ago when we decided to do this, it really was a great thing because we both were kind of frustrated with being able to impact change. So with doing this, we've noticed that we're able to push our vision and really impact change for the better.
Let's talk, I guess, a little bit more about that corporate vision. Then you seem to have a heavy focus on compliance, things like RMF and other security frameworks. Why is that such an important piece to what you do?
I can take that one. So I would say that when I look back in my career at all the positions that I've held, none of them were security focused until probably I'd say between 2012 and 2015, when things started to kind of shift a little bit. And when I noticed it, I noticed that there was this rift between the technical people and the compliance people at that time. So we had people who were saying, hey, you need to do these certain things. But then when you would respond back and say, well, this impacts productivity, the system can't do that, or we need to mitigate this some other way, there was this disconnect where they didn't quite understand. I'm not saying all of them, but it was pretty rampant in the department that I was supporting at the time. When I noticed that, I was like, okay, well, why is it that we have compliance folks that are pushing, technical implementations and policies that may not have the background or understand the systems in which they're pushing it on? So I took it upon myself to kind of do the research, and then I moved over into a position where I was kind of dual hatting, doing some RMF work, which was DIACAP at the time. There was a transition in the Army where They got rid of DIACAB, moved over to RMF. So I was participating in that. And I realized I had a really good knack for it because I understand technical side. And now I'm starting to understand the law and how to read all of these interesting rules and how they're written, how to apply them. So that's kind of why we're focused on that. My vision is that I want to bridge the gap between, the IT understanding the technical side and the compliance cybersecurity side that is usually sometimes it's just someone who's trying to push paper, but we still need to understand what we're pushing because compliance is technically cybersecurity, but it's not going to completely secure your system. So we have to start to educate them a little bit more.
Awesome. Iulia, anything to add on that one?
Compliance has always been part of my roles as well. Different compliance. It was more of a financial trading compliance. So the subject has always been near and dear to my heart and kind of I'd say a theme throughout my position. So I think compliance was a natural fit with the direction that we took, coupled with Justin's expertise and just passion for making compliance more of a, I'd say, inception part of the process of the approaches and the essentially programs that we see. We see a lot of the times compliance is addressed more of as a postpartum. And I think what we're trying to do is bring attention and include compliance at the forefront so we don't scramble later trying to secure something operational versus doing it up front and ensuring that there is no, risks, no exposure, or no issues that are associated with that set system program or, whatever we're securing at the time.
All right, you kind of spoke into my next question, so thank you for reading my mind on this one. So your background is a lot more in the financial sector.
Correct. That is correct.
In terms of that compliance, were there any other aspects of that you were able to very effectively translate over into building a cybersecurity company?
I think compliance was one of them. And I think not so much compliance in the financial way. We're talking about cyber compliance, which is a completely different field, different set of certs. Logic, I'd say broadly, is similar. You're compliant to a certain regulation, be it FAR or a different one. So logically, it's the same process. Now, what you're complying to and what we're talking about being compliant are two different things. So no, financial one doesn't quite translate. But what I've noticed that some of the project management skills are definitely transferable. And they are very applicable to the government process for anyone who's looking to join from the commercial side. Oftentimes, maybe the language would be kind of foreign, if you will, or intimidating or sounding different. But really, if you drill down to the core of the project or the processes, there's a lot of transferable skills that you can find on your resume that, with the help of rephrasing it, you would sound relevant to the new opportunity if that's the field you're entering.
All right. Awesome. We're going to circle back around on some of that as well, because I think there's some good points you brought up. Justin, I want to come back to you a little bit. During your bio, we heard that you're a subject matter expert when it comes to CMMC, which is a hot topic all around, certainly in the DoD world, but within the federal government. How did you get involved in that, and what are some of the kind of work that you do right now in support of CMMC?
Sure. So CMMC was kind of like I didn't know about it until a colleague of mine sent me a link. It was like, hey, have you heard about, this new framework they're going to start pushing for government contracts? This was like 2 years ago, I think, or a year and a half ago. I think it's 2 years ago now. And so I started looking into it, and I realized that there were a lot of similarities between what they're trying to push for CMMC and what the government does on RMF. I mean, it's kind of RMF light, so to speak. But so when I started diving into it, we had a discussion between Iulia and I, and we're like, I think this aligns really well with, what we want to do. And we can also service members of the DIB as well, which we know is very important because they're the third parties that are connecting usually into these sites, and we need to make sure that they're secure. So after looking at the Cyber AB and kind of going through, we did the training, so RP and RPA. We decided against doing any of the assessment part of it as of right now. So we want to do prep. So what we're doing right now is we have a company, we're helping part of the DIB that we're doing policies for. We're helping to ensure that the infrastructure is up to the level in which they need it to be. So they're going level 1 or level 2, which I believe they're doing level 2. And yeah, so we've been doing a lot of the prep work. We're really prepared. And like I said, it aligns very well with a lot of the RMF language, right? The NIST documents. So it came natural to us to want to start doing that.
So it's more or less a natural extension of what you were already working on.
Yeah.
Okay. We going through some of my questions here. We talked a little bit about what led you to start your own company. It was, other than kind of having that ability to present your own vision. I mean, the two of you, because I know you two knew each other before the company. That's what brought you together. Mm-hmm. So what prompted you really in that regard to say, hey, it's time? Was there anything specific? Because Justin, especially you'd worked for a number of companies, you've been in the field for quite a while on the cybersecurity side. What hit you is that moment that said it's time to do our own thing instead of working for somebody else?
It's a good question. So throughout my career, especially working on the government side, I've had numerous people throughout my career say, hey, why don't you just go do it on your own? Like, why are you working for somebody else? You could do this, blah, blah, blah. So never really took the dive or plunge, right? So Iulia and I were talking, and when we met, and then a little bit, time passed, and it came up again, and we started kicking it around. And I was like, you know what? I think it's a good idea. I mean, we both have very good skills. We've been in the market a long time. We understand it. So yeah, I think it was just we talked about it. It kept coming up, and we pulled the trigger.
And Iulia, from your perspective, especially in the more the finance and the business world, I mean, were you basically like, hey, why haven't we done this 20 years ago?
Hindsight is always 20/20, and I wish, but we didn't. It's interesting, you made this question made me think, and I remember when I was working in Morgan Stanley, we had these magnetic stickers or whatever it was, magnets, and on my cabinet, and everyone had this one word, and it was just ownership. And it was, relevant to your own processes, daily responsibilities, but ownership of the process. And I just think we just took it. I took that word really, it's seared, I guess, over the years in me. And I think we just wanted to own the decisions and see the impact of it versus continuing to stay in our careers and not always have a benefit of seeing the impact of your actions.
So you mentioned the concept of hindsight. Would you have gone back and done this earlier if you had the opportunity?
Earlier, 100%. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah,
if I knew to, I would have done it probably 10 years ago.
So for someone that's looking to get into the cybersecurity world, then obviously I don't think we're expecting people to come out of high school and be like, I'm going to start my own cybersecurity lemonade stand. But what were some of the foundational areas that you think as you look back now, that you already had in place, 5-10 years prior, that you could have capitalized on and actually started a little bit sooner?
I think one of the key things is both of us can share that, here and there throughout our careers, we both did have separate ideas of maybe having our own business. And I think if you do have those kind of ideas and you do think that there's a high chance or any chance that you might be doing something with it, open your LLC early. Get that, at least the history of it going. Mm-hmm. Do it slower than when you're like, let's do it now and do everything at the same time, because it becomes 50 tasks. If you start slowly and you build time and you slower build the exposure to your partners, or I think that that's a valuable thing, and it gives you a longer runway. Maybe it will allow you to make more mistakes early on, right? There's a definitely time and place where you can allow and afford to make mistakes versus later states where you can't. So definitely if time allows, if the situation allows, take chances, do something, take a risk. At least for me, I know that that was a make it or break it. We had to do it, or I think I would have been pondering what if we did it 10 years from now. So I think that was a pivotal moment where action had to be taken.
Justin, you had a lot more hands-on in your early career. You mentioned doing system administrator, server builds, help desk, those types of things. Are you still as hands-on now that you're in that leadership role within a company?
No, but I would say I miss it. I tend to dabble when I can, right? But no, and that's what I've noticed throughout my career. The further I've gotten, the less I am on a keyboard, which has its advantages and disadvantages, right? I have my advantages are that I can really get to know the people who work for me. I can understand their strengths. I can understand, where I need to step in and help out. But it does give me some sort of sometimes of a disadvantage on understanding of maybe where a system is or, what we're doing at the time. But again, easily get caught up. As far as, like you said earlier, people entering the cyber field or at least IT in general, um, I always feel as though if you have a passion for something, so if you start to dabble around in IT early on, and you realize that you have a lot of fun coding or you have a lot of fun building a system or using VMware or whatever it is you may be enjoying at the time, that is exactly what you should be focusing on. The IT field is so massive that you can be a subject matter expert in, say, you know, virtualization, cloud computing. You can be cybersecurity, but cybersecurity is very broad, right? So, choose something within there that you really like, that you're passionate about, and go for it. The world of IT is very accepting. I can say that throughout my career, I've rarely run across anyone who was, not willing to share knowledge. It's one of those fields where people are so happy to give that knowledge out. So I think anyone who wants to get into it should do that. Definitely find something you're passionate about.
What would be your advice, just to kind of pull the thread a little bit more, for someone to actually discover their passion? Because as you said, it's an extremely broad career field. You talk
Yeah.
about IT, and then of course there's a difference between IT and cyber. There's so much involved in that. Do you have any advice on how someone can actually begin to identify where they might have a passion in? Because just because you got a job somewhere doesn't
Mhm.
mean that's where you necessarily belong. But sometimes it can be hard to break out.
I would look at your personal life first. I mean, everyone has a phone, right? Everyone has a smartphone. Everyone usually has a tablet. Maybe you have a laptop if you're that techie. But um, usually there's something you do right on your laptop, your phone, your tablet that has something to do with IT. Maybe you like to, I don't know, maybe you mess around and draw apps or you, I don't know, mess around with settings on your phone and you find it fun to find different Easter eggs or bugs or whatever. That could be an area you go into. Or honestly, you could go out to these websites. There's a bunch of them, Udemy. Um, what's the other one? I can't think of it. But anyway, there's training, and you can take different trainings in different areas to figure it out as well. I don't know. It's kind of hard, I guess, unless you, when I say passionate about it, normally you would know, right? If you're like, okay, I want to do something in computers, you should be able to kind of feel it out, what area you want to be in. Now, you're right when it comes to the position you want to hold because there's a level of expertise. But anyone starting out, help desk is probably your best bet. Learn how to troubleshoot. Um, and go from there. It's not a high paying position, but it can be used as a springboard to go almost anywhere in IT. Help desk and desktop support is your entry into, I think, anywhere.
All right. And Yulia, coming from a kind of a different sector, you've probably had to get a lot more cyber smart to support the business operations. What are some of the resources that you've used, or have you just basically just picked Justin's brain the whole time?
It's a healthy combination of both, between, picking his brain or attending webinars or seminars and just listening to the language, because I can't say that one of the bigger challenges for me personally was just grasping the language. Finance has its own acronym word soup, and here some of the acronyms are even same, and it double confuses me of what people may be talking about. But back to the basics. I mean, just making sure that you understand the basics, language, you meet the people. I will definitely highlight the importance of having a mentor or a friend in the industry that either can help you be guided in the right way, maybe warn you of some of the traps or issues or barriers that you may face. But mentorships, talking to the people within the industry, showing interest in learning about subjects they talk about, which doesn't always mean that you're attending something, right? You can do research on your own. I know that quite a few times, if I was confused about what was being talked about, I just, took it down and did my own research that evening, the next day, to understand, right? And it just, I think, goes back to your willingness to continually learn, improve yourself, and not hesitate to try. I might not have the best advice as far as, starting out in cyber, but I think any starting point is better than just pondering it, because in failure, there's so much to learn. There's so many lessons about discovering what you actually don't like to do or you might not be good at doing. I think it's as valuable as discovering what may interest you, is realistically assessing where you might be lacking, so then you know how to complement that skill on the team, or plug that gap, if you will. But it's as important to discover by trial and error. Try something. If you don't like it, try something different. But in that, you will at least eliminate 2 or 3 things that you shouldn't waste your time on.
You said a very important word that comes up a lot in these episodes that we have, and that was mentor. How have you actually gone out and identified mentors to help you along the way?
I think at least in Morgan, it was a very open process, if you will, right? And you could go up to a successful managing director or executive director, or whoever you find as maybe inspiration or kind of a person you want to model after. You could just ask for it, right? I've never hesitated asking for a mentorship of a person who, in my view, is more successful in a certain aspect, because I think that's probably the best way to learn, is by asking questions, understanding their journey, maybe knowing what to avoid. And I think that that's the most important. And even now, if I meet, say, a business owner that has done more or is way further in this journey, I ask for it. And I said, do you mind being a mentor? Or it doesn't have to be a formal program. Now, I have participated and tried to attend at least one formal program a year. As you mentioned, Rutgers was a great program. It was Grow, had a lot of exposure to different professionals from various industries, and that also expands your network. I'm part of AstraZeneca program now, which is also great because, again, exposure, you get to learn about people, different walks of life, their experience. And through that, you inevitably learn lessons for yourself, and certain things you adopt for the business model you're in, certain things you definitely know to avoid because of the shared information. So that is absolutely invaluable. The worth of mentorship, throughout my career and especially now, has been a tremendous value.
Justin, what can you add to that?
I've I've never had formal mentors through the years. I always tended to look at people that I worked with, and the ones that were either they're longer than me, were doing more stuff than I was. I tended to just ask and say, hey, I'd really like to shadow you for a while, or, can you teach me some of those things that you're doing because I've never done it before. And like I had previously mentioned, the amount of people I've come across in my career that have been resistant to help, I can't think of one. Now, I will say that there are heated discussions around ways of doing certain things in certain ways, but that always is a good thing, right? We always want those types of discussions. Recently, well, not recently, but when I was doing my cybersecurity training, and I was going out and I was instructing, out of all the careers that I've had and positions I've held, that is probably my most favorite, because it was kind of like I was a mentor, even though it was just a class we were teaching. I met a lot of very skilled, intelligent military cyber operators. Um, Still have friends, with them to this day, and I would not, I considered them more of a mentor than I was to them because some of the stuff that they were doing. So I think they're valuable. I think that when you're technical, you want an operational mentor. So you want someone who's actually doing the work, not someone who's done it and is just telling you. There's a big difference.
That's actually a great point. That difference between having that technical and operational piece and actually getting in there. I think that's great. Going back to your early career, I think you mentioned you actually had already started working in the field before you got your degree. I think you said your first job helped you, or first or second job helped you pay for it.
Yeah.
So we live in a world now where it's almost an expectation that everyone's doing at least 16 years of school coming out.
I know, right?
Have you seen, is it still a possibility for folks to start getting into this field early while they're in school, or even before they get to the degree altogether, and actually building those skill sets ahead of time?
Yes. And I'll tell you how. The troubleshooting is the single most important thing you can have in the IT world. If you cannot troubleshoot, it's tough to do anything. You're going to start at a different place. It's going to take you longer to get to the solution. I think that trying to think, with that skill set, that should get you pretty far, at least get you in, right? You could start at entry-level positions doing that. You can learn a lot of that online. You could do a lot of it on your own. That should get you in the door. Once you're in doing that, you can move around, maybe pick and choose, take some certifications. Certs are really big. One of the things, well, I shouldn't say certs are really big. Certs are important when you're trying to move up. A lot of organizations value them. CompTIA, CISSP is a big one. Having those will help you move up as well. But just starting out, troubleshooting, I would have to leverage would be the single most important thing, in my opinion.
All right. Iulia, I promised to return to comments you mentioned earlier, so I'm delivering. You talked about kind of that transition from the finance sector more into the cybersecurity. It really comes down to that transfer of skills, rephrasing how certain things are. Did you have any resources that you used to kind of translate your background into something that meant more into this field, or do you have any recommendations for how somebody can take what may at the surface appear to be unrelated, but actually really is something that transfers over and just needs to be reworded?
Few, I guess, different advices. Through my commercial career, I've always wanted to work for the government. And anytime I use my commercial resume for anything on USA Jobs, it just wasn't working. So there is most definitely a completely different approach to what seems to be very same skills, right? The language is different, the format expected is different. So I'd say definitely if you're making a change, looking at something as simple as your resume and restructuring it in a format that government accepts from you is an extremely important, seemingly small thing to do, but really making sure that you meet that expectation. And as far as transferable skills, I would say the best thing that I did or can advise is putting your current job and the job that you think you're going for in a different field side by side. Similarities are going to be definitely there, and you'll be able to highlight them. Now, the differentiators, or maybe a custom program you're working in now, that may not transfer, but aspects of your job still do. So I would encourage maybe breaking it down further into the functions you do now, and then either with a, you know, I would probably just Google that unless you have friends in the industry that can help you reword it. I would just say, what is the best way to reword those commercial experiences in what would be understood and valuable for the government person who's reviewing your resume.
All right. We talk about folks getting into the career field and trying to advance. Justin, you mentioned things like certifications. Are there any other pieces of advice that you would give to someone to help set themselves aside from their peers in this world? If they're looking to advance, looking to get ahead, or just show that passion that you mentioned earlier, which is so important. Is it training, certification, degrees? What else can somebody do to kind of set themselves apart?
I think a lot of these conferences now, they do these capture the flag events. Even what we're doing right now, right? Putting your ideas out there, talking about what you're doing, posting, being vocal, it could get you some exposure. It's tough now, right? I mean, there's a ton of us, and cybersecurity is a very fast growing field. So to be different and be niche is getting a lot harder. AI, right? We could talk about that. It's moving fast. In my opinion, I think we're kind of at a standstill for the next so many years until we see the next huge jump in AI. So now would be the time if you're just starting out in IT and you want to get into a field that's not overly saturated. Learn how to do some coding, learn how to set up LLMs, learn how to talk that language, because every single job posting that I've been looking at now, just like perusing by, has some sort of AI piece to it now. They want you to at least understand it, maybe even know how to work with it, implement it. I'm not really sure yet, but that is definitely an area that you could separate yourself from the pack.
Iulia, do you have anything to add to that from a business owner perspective? You maybe look at ways a little differently.
I think the best differentiators would be, because on paper skills are skills, but what really differentiates you is your ideas and your personality. So I think the differentiator would be some of the soft skills you can bring to the table as well. Those are a bit harder, I think, to put on the resume. However, they're as valuable, if not more valuable at times, for when you're dealing with a client. So I think differentiator is you. Like, don't be afraid to be different. Talk about your passion projects. Really express, what you're about. Because again, on the paper, if everybody has the same cert, the same similar standing education, not much to it, but it's your personality and soft skills that will set you or put you ahead of the pack.
So in this industry, it's very easy for somebody to get completely focused on the technical aspect. Do you have any advice or resources that you would recommend to help develop some more of those soft skills outside of that traditional career field?
I'm thinking. Developing.
Just to put you on the spot, right?
I know it can be easy. For soft skills, I think the best thing is to challenge yourself to do something you're uncomfortable doing, and really continue practicing this. I also think that some of I believe there are classes on such things as soft skills where it's more so taught, right? If you're very, very technical and maybe it's something you're not even considering developing, there are classes that can teach you. And I think part of my Rutgers mentorship was soft skills, addressing those, understanding, being more compassionate to the team. And it has to do with, people, being a people leader and all of the approaches to growing a successful team of, what could be cross-domain professionals or people that are not necessarily even speak the same language.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I was thinking about your Yale and Rutgers piece because they weren't degree necessarily granting, but it's still, I think a lot of people think if you're not going to college to get a degree, you're not learning, but there's a lot of resources out there.
Oh, yeah.
Justin, you mentioned Udemy and a couple other, sites like that as well.
Yeah. I don't know that, I wouldn't say the traditional degree taught me soft skills per se, but I think the mentorship pieces and all of the mentors, my managers that are heavily relied on, they were the main drivers of where I picked up certain aspects and certain, I guess, approaches to people management.
Like your bio said, lifelong learner. I think that's important.
Have to be.
Mm-hmm.
As we're kind of winding down here the last few minutes, but a couple questions I want to ask you guys. Do you have any recommendations about how someone can stay current on what's happening in this career field? Because it's very easy to get lost in a certain niche environment and miss out things like Justin, you mentioned AI as it progresses or other types of what those trends are. Are there any resources, websites, podcasts, anything that you would say, hey, this is a good source to stay current?
I can't remember put me on the spot. I can't remember the names of them offhand, but there are a bunch of LinkedIn groups. There's groups on there's a Cybersecurity of Excellence one that I follow. They push out all of the trending vulnerabilities, trending hacks, trending system updates. Those are really good to read through. Again, to your point, like staying current in IT is very difficult. Depending on what field you're in, right? I mean, we all should try to be well-rounded, but it's difficult. So as far as right now, staying current, definitely those feeds online. LinkedIn is a huge one. I usually am on there daily reading up on tech news.
Excellent. Do you use any resources, Julia, on the cybersecurity
I
side?
agree with Justin. There's a lot of LinkedIn experts I follow, and I do read their newsletters and posts. And then again, that educates me further and also brings to our attention maybe new trends, new regulations, changes, whatever it is. So follow the experts, follow people who are spearheading the way in their respective areas. And I think that's how you stay current, because otherwise you're kind of falling into the role you're playing and might not be paying attention around you.
All right. And my last question, I'll let you guys flip a coin to see who goes first. If you could go back to the beginning of your career, what would you do differently and why?
Justin, you want to take this one first?
That's the coin flip. Okay.
I was trying to think. Do something differently. I think I would probably plug myself more into my father's business early on, because he was doing all the IT consulting and everything like that when I was a teenager. So I think that if I could go back to my younger self to say, hey, let's focus more on this than, maybe some of the other stuff I was doing as a teenager, maybe I'd be further along in my career. But I don't know. That's a tough one, Nate.
Well, all right. Yulia, he handed it off to you on that one.
Well, I had a minute to think, so my question should be better. My answer should be better. I think what I would have done different, right? I graduated with business administration degree. I think I would have done either a dual major or I would have done a major in an IT related field. As I mentioned earlier, I wanted to do more with legal, and I think that I would have taken that course, more of a cyber law or, kind of a regulatory aspect of cyber. So I think I would have completely changed my education, not to say that business administration is not useful now. It is, but I think I would have done an extra degree if I could. And another thing, I think what I would have done differently is early on when I was just starting out, it felt like if you don't stay in this position, you're not going to get a different job. I think I should have been faster to walk away from the positions that were not necessarily progressing or developing my skills as a professional. So I would have been more bold to walk away earlier if I could. In my specifically early career, like those early first few positions, you know, you always feel like that's it, and I'm going to be here for 25 years. And I think I should have walked away. And we are where we are now, but I think maybe we would have been further along too.
That's awesome. It's great advice. I want to thank both of you for sharing your experiences with the community today. This has been great. You already mentioned LinkedIn. If folks watching or this live now or on the recording later on want to be able to reach out to you, are you able to touch base with folks on LinkedIn?
Mm-hmm. Certainly, anybody, if you're interested in mentorship, asking questions, or just general, how did you guys open your LLC? Do reach out. We're very communicative and friendly, so happy to help where we can.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. And thanks again to everyone that's watching or listening to our discussion today or on the recording. Today's discussion is going to be posted and available via both the Tutora Breda and the AUSCF websites. Just to close, the Tutora Breda Institute and Association of Cyber Forces are committed to reshaping and empowering diverse collaboration, developing the cyber workforce. And you're the reason that we do what we do. So we hope today's conversation has helped you, the listener, on your cyber professional development path. Thank you again to Iulia and Justin Griffin from Cactus Group for joining us. On behalf of Tutora Breda and AUSCF, I want to thank everybody and look forward to joining us on the next Cyber Workforce Series discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nate, I feel like